The doctor's hands trembled as he held the chart, his eyes scanning the test results. The room was cold, the hum of the machines the only sound breaking the silence. The billionaire, once a force of power, now lay in the sterile bed, pale and motionless. 10 doctors had tried everything, but his body was failing. There was nothing more they could do. Yet, as the doctors gathered, a woman entered the room. She was dressed in black, her uniform impeccable. The housekeeper. She had been with the family for years, but had never seen the billionaire like this, broken, defeated, vulnerable. She didn't belong here among the medical professionals, but she had a look in her eyes, something sharp, something they hadn't seen before. She moved quietly to the side of the bed, glancing at the billionaire, then at the doctors. She knew what was being said behind closed doors. Too far gone, no hope. They had given up, but she hadn't. With trembling hands, she adjusted the blanket at the foot of the bed, then noticed something. A small slip of paper had fallen from his hand. It was barely noticeable, but she spotted it. Her heart skipped a beat as she bent down to pick it up. The paper was covered in blood, smeared with faint ink, but she could still make out the words. It was a note, but not just any note, it was a warning. They know, they're coming. Her breath caught in her throat. She looked at the doctors, but they were too busy discussing the next steps. Their voices muffled. She stuffed the note into her pocket and stepped back, the weight of the words heavy in her mind. Something was terribly wrong. No one had been talking about this. No one had mentioned threats. No one had said anything about danger. She turned to leave the room, her heart pounding. There was more at play here than just illness. A storm was coming, and she had to find out who was behind it and why they were targeting him. As she stepped into the hallway, she froze. 2 security guards passed by, their eyes scanning the halls, their faces hard. Something about them felt ... off. The housekeeper didn't trust them. She walked quickly to the elevator, her mind racing. The billionaire was not just sick. This was something bigger, something dangerous, and she was the only one who knew. The housekeeper paced back and forth in her small apartment, the weight of the note pressing on her mind. She had worked in the billionaire's household for over a decade, but never had she witnessed anything like this. There had always been whispers, rumors of secrets buried beneath the surface, but she never imagined they would come for him, her employer, the man who had given her everything. She sat down at the small kitchen table, staring at the blood-stained note. Her hands trembled as she carefully unfolded it. The words "they know, they're coming" kept echoing in her mind. Who had written it? Why hadn't anyone mentioned this? The doctors, the staff, his family, none of them seemed to know what was happening. She wasn't naive. She knew there were powerful people who wanted to bring him down. His empire, built on ruthless business dealings and political influence, had made him enemies. But this felt different. This wasn't just about money or power, it was personal. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in years. It rang twice before a deep voice answered. "Yes, I need you to find something for me," she said, her voice low. "It's about him. I need to know who's been threatening him." The voice on the other end was quiet for a moment, then spoke. "You sure you want to get involved in this? You've seen how it ends for people like us." "I'm not asking you," she replied. "Just do it." There was a long pause before the voice responded, resigned. "Fine, I'll find out, but you better be ready for what's coming." She hung up, her stomach in knots. She didn't want to involve anyone else, but this wasn't just a matter of a sick billionaire. This was something far darker. She had to protect him. He was the only person who had ever truly treated her like family, and she owed him everything. As she sat back, her thoughts raced. The doctor's words earlier still echoed in her head. "There's nothing we can do." That wasn't true. She knew it. She'd seen too many impossible situations turn around in her life. She wasn't giving up on him. Not now, not ever. The doorbell rang, and she stood up quickly, startled. She wasn't expecting anyone. She looked through the peephole and saw a man in a dark suit, his face hidden by shadows. He looked familiar, but she couldn't place him. Her heart raced. She hadn't seen anyone like him before, not in her apartment, not in her life. She opened the door cautiously. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice steady despite the unease bubbling up inside her. The man looked at her, his eyes cold and calculating. "I know you have something," he said quietly. "Something important. You should hand it over now." She froze, instinctively clutching the note in her pocket. "Who are you?" she demanded, trying to steady her breath. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "The question isn't who I am, but who you'll trust. "You see, you have two choices. Give me the note and walk away, or I'll make sure no one ever hears from you again." Fear gripped her chest, but she stood tall, refusing to show weakness. She didn't know who this man was, but one thing was clear. She had stumbled onto something far bigger than she'd anticipated. The choice was hers, but it felt like a trap. Whatever was happening, she couldn't back out now. She had to protect the billionaire, no matter what it took. The man outside her door didn't move, his eyes never leaving hers. The tension in the air was thick, and the housekeeper's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the sweat forming on her palms, but she refused to let him see her fear. She had no idea who this man was or how much danger she was in. But there was one thing she knew for sure. She couldn't give him the note. "Who sent you?" she asked, her voice steady but firm. "What do you want with it?" He smiled again, the kind of smile that made her blood run cold. "You don't need to know that. All you need to do is hand it over, and you can walk away from this unscathed." Her mind raced. This man wasn't just after the note, he was after something far bigger, something connected to the billionaire's past. She thought back to the doctor's words, the way they had brushed off his condition, the way they acted like everything was over. They didn't know about the threats. They didn't know what was really going on. She backed up slowly, her fingers brushing against the side of the door, as if she might reach for something, anything, to defend herself. "I'm not giving you anything," she said, her voice stronger now, fueled by an instinct to protect. The man's expression darkened, his eyes narrowing. "This doesn't have to end badly for you, but it will if you don't do as I say." Before she could react, he lunged, but she was ready. With one swift motion, she slammed the door in his face and locked it. Her heart was racing now, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She didn't know what he had planned, but she had to get out of there. She needed to find the truth and protect herself. She grabbed her phone, quickly calling the only person she could trust. The voice on the other end picked up instantly. "What did you find out?" she demanded, trying to keep her composure. "They're connected to his past," came the reply, the voice low and urgent. "The billionaire, he's not just being targeted for his wealth. There's something he did, something secret, and there are people who will stop at nothing to destroy him." "What kind of secret?" she asked, panic rising in her chest. "I don't know yet, but you need to be careful. Whoever you're dealing with, they're dangerous, and they're not the only ones looking for that note." A sudden knock on the door jolted her out of the conversation. Her pulse spiked, and she froze. Was it him again? Or was someone else after her? "Don't trust anyone," the voice warned urgently. "Get out of there, now." She didn't hesitate. She hung up and bolted toward the window, peering through the blinds. The street below was empty. Too empty. She grabbed her coat and, with one last glance at the door, moved quickly to the fire escape. There was no time to waste. She had to find out what this note meant, and she had to get the answers before it was too late. As she stepped onto the fire escape, she heard the door open behind her. Her pulse raced. They were in her apartment. They were already inside. She didn't look back. The fire escape creaked under her weight as she descended quickly, her heart hammering in her chest. The sounds of footsteps echoed through her apartment above, growing louder as the men searched for her. She kept her head down, moving as fast as she could, but her mind was racing. She needed to figure out who was behind this, who would go to such lengths to silence her, and why. She reached the ground and blended into the shadows, her coat pulled tight around her body. Her breath came in shallow gasps, but she forced herself to stay calm. The note still burned a hole in her pocket, a constant reminder that whatever was happening, it was far from over. It wasn't just about saving the billionaire anymore, it was about surviving. She didn't know where to go next. The only person who might be able to help her now was the man she'd called earlier, the one who had warned her. But could she trust him? He'd given her just enough to keep her on edge without revealing the full truth. She had to keep moving. There was no time to waste. After a few minutes of walking briskly through the dark streets, she ducked into an alleyway, pulling out her phone. She scrolled through the contact list, her thumb hovering over the name. Her pulse quickened. There was one other person she could turn to, the billionaire's personal assistant. She didn't trust the assistant completely, but she was his right hand. If anyone knew the full story, it would be her. She pressed dial, and after a few tense seconds, the assistant's voice came through. "It's me," she said, keeping her voice low. "I need to know everything. I've got to note something about a threat, and I think there's more to this than anyone realizes." The assistant paused before speaking, her tone measured. "You shouldn't be calling me right now. It's not safe for either of us. There are people watching. I'm not sure who they are, but they're connected to the billionaire's past before he became who he is now. His history is more complicated than you know. That's what I thought, the housekeeper said, stepping further into the shadows. But I need answers. Why would anyone want him dead? Why is someone after me now? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When the assistant spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. You don't understand what he did. There are people, dangerous people who he crossed years ago. They've been waiting for the right moment to bring him down. And now they're going after everything, including you. The housekeeper's stomach dropped. What are you talking about? He made a deal that involved them, but he thought he was out of it. He didn't realize that some debts, especially ones made with people like that, never get paid off. Not until they decide it's time. A chill ran down her spine. The billionaire, a man who seemed untouchable, had made a deal with the wrong people, and now it was all coming crashing down. Where do I go? She asked, desperation creeping into her voice. You need to leave the city. The assistant replied urgently. Get as far away as you can. I'll try to cover for you, but you can't stay there any longer. Trust me, they know who you are, and if they find you, you won't make it out alive. Before the housekeeper could respond, the line went dead. Her grip tightened around the phone. She couldn't leave, not without knowing what had happened to the billionaire. He was in a coma, his life hanging by a thread, and she was the only one who knew the truth behind the threats. But if she stayed, she'd be putting herself and anyone she cared about in danger. She glanced back at the alley, her instincts screaming at her to move. The clock was ticking. She had to act fast. Suddenly, a car screeched to a halt at the end of the alley. The headlights flashed, blinding her for a moment. When her vision cleared, she saw a figure stepping out of the vehicle, tall and menacing, dressed in a black suit. It was the same man who had threatened her earlier. Time's up, he said, a cruel smile spreading across his face. Her heart skipped a beat. There was no escape now. The housekeeper's pulse surged as the man stepped closer, his cold eyes never leaving her face. She stood frozen for a moment, trapped in the alley, her back pressed against the cold brick wall. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. She could feel the weight of the situation closing in, suffocating her. Get in the car, the man ordered, his voice low and authoritative. His eyes flicked to the shadows, scanning the alley as if expecting others to emerge. She didn't move. Fear gripped her, but so did a strange, unshakable determination. She wasn't going down without a fight, not after everything she had already been through. She had a choice. She always had a choice. The man took another step forward, his hand reaching for her arm, but she was quicker. With all her strength, she swung her bag at his face, hitting him with a force she didn't know she had. The man staggered back, his hands shooting up to his face as he cursed under his breath. In that split second of chaos, she sprinted past him, darting toward the street. Her legs burned as she ran, but her mind was sharp, calculating. She couldn't let him catch her. Not now. She turned the corner and found herself on a busy street, the noise of traffic and voices filling the air. She slowed her pace, trying to blend in, but her heart was still hammering in her chest. She glanced over her shoulder, but the man was nowhere in sight. Had she lost him? Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out, hands trembling. It was the assistant. Get to the old warehouse on 12th Street. The assistant's voice crackled through the line. They've got surveillance on you. They'll be tracking you soon. You need to hurry. How do you know all this? The housekeeper asked, struggling to keep her voice steady. I know everything, the assistant said, her tone urgent. And you need to get out of there. Trust me, it's the only way to find the truth and survive. The housekeeper's mind raced. She didn't have much time. The billionaire's life, her own, and so much more was tangled in a web of lies. She had to unravel it, and fast. She cut through the city, moving quickly but carefully, trying not to draw attention to herself. Every passing car, every shadow, every face seemed to be watching her, and the gnawing sense of being hunted grew stronger with each step. The city felt like a cage now, and she was the prey. When she finally reached 12th Street, she saw the old warehouse in the distance. The building was dark, abandoned, with only a faint light flickering from the cracked windows. It looked like the perfect place for a meeting or an ambush. The door was slightly ajar when she approached. She hesitated for a moment, the fear creeping up her spine, but then she pushed it open and stepped inside. The warehouse was eerily quiet, the only sounds her breathing and the distant hum of city life. She moved carefully, stepping over scattered debris as she ventured deeper into the building. Her eyes scanned every corner, every shadow, but there was no one. "Hello," she called out, her voice echoing in the vast, empty space. And then she heard Ethel's mocking chuckle from behind her. She spun around, but the man in the black suit was already there, standing in the darkness, his face half hidden by shadows. "You really think you can run from me?" he asked, his voice dripping with menace. "You don't even know who you're dealing with. Who are you?" she demanded, taking a step back. "What do you want with me?" "With him," the man smirked. "It's not about him anymore. It's about you. You've gotten too close to the truth. And now, it's time to make sure you don't live to tell it." Before she could react, the sound of footsteps echoed from the far side of the warehouse. A tall figure emerged from the shadows, a woman this time, her expression cold and calculating. The housekeeper's blood ran cold when she recognized her. It was the billionaire's wife. "You've been a fool," the wife said, her voice sharp, venomous. "You thought you were protecting him, but you've only sealed your fate." The housekeeper's heart raced as the realization hit her. The woman she had trusted, the one who seemed to be a victim just like her, was behind it all. She had been working with the people trying to bring the billionaire down. She was just as dangerous as they were. The wife took a step closer, her eyes locked on the housekeeper's. "You think he's innocent. He's not. He's buried so many secrets, and you've uncovered just the tip of the iceberg. But now it's over." The housekeeper's mind spun. The billionaire's wife had been the mastermind all along. The betrayal stung deeper than anything she had ever imagined. "Why?" she whispered, barely able to speak the word. "Why do this? Why now?" The wife smiled, cold and empty. "Because I'm done with him, and you're the last obstacle in my way. You've had your fun. Now it's time for you to disappear." Before the housekeeper could react, she felt the cold steel of a gun pressed to the back of her head. It was all falling apart. The cold steel of the gun pressed against the back of her head made her skin crawl. She could feel the bitter weight of it, the finality in the air. But even in the face of death, she refused to let fear control her. She had fought too hard to get this far. "Go ahead," she whispered, her voice steady, almost defiant. "You think this is the end of me? You're wrong." The billionaire's wife paused, her eyes narrowing. "You don't get it, do you? There's nothing left for you. No one will believe your story. You've walked into my trap, and now you'll disappear quietly, just like the rest." But the housekeeper wasn't listening. Her mind was working, calculating. She had seen the wife's hesitation, the way her hand wavered just for a moment when she raised the gun. She wasn't as confident as she appeared. "You're making a mistake," the housekeeper said, her voice low but piercing. "You'd think I've only just uncovered your secrets, but I've uncovered yours too." The wife's eyes flickered with a brief flash of uncertainty, but she quickly masked it with a cold smile. "You don't have anything on me." "Oh, but I do," the housekeeper replied, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. "You've been hiding your true motives from everyone, but you've never been as careful as you thought. I know what you've been doing, and I know exactly who you've been working with." The wife stiffened, her finger tightening round the trigger. "Enough of this. It's over." But before she could pull the trigger, a loud crash echoed through the warehouse. Both women turned, startled. The housekeeper's heart skipped a beat. In the dim light, she saw a familiar figure emerge from the shadows. It was the billionaire. He was alive, barely able to stand, his clothes torn, his face pale and bruised, but it was him. The life support monitors from the hospital had been removed. He was no longer tethered to the machines that had once kept him alive. He had somehow made it here, on his own, with nothing but sheer willpower. The wife's face turned to stone as she stared at him. "You shouldn't be here," she spat, her hand trembling. Lowering the gun slightly, he took a slow, measured step toward her, his voice hoarse but filled with authority. "It's you who shouldn't be here. You thought you could kill me, destroy me, erase everything I've built. But you're wrong. You're nothing more than a coward hiding behind your lies." The wife's expression faltered for a moment, the control she had over the situation slipping through her fingers. The billionaire, against all odds, had come back not just from the brink of death, but from the grip of his own wife's betrayal. "You're not in control anymore," he continued, his voice gaining strength. "You thought you could use me, manipulate me, but you were wrong. I see it all now. Every little secret you've been hiding, every lie you've spun." The wife's eyes filled with panic, but she quickly regained her composure. "You'll never win," she hissed. "You think people will believe you? You think anyone will care?" The billionaire smirked, his eyes locked on hers with a piercing intensity. "It's not about believing me, it's about the truth finally coming out. People will see who you are, who you've always been." The housekeeper stepped forward, her resolve solidifying with every word he spoke. She had been right all along. This wasn't just about saving him, it was about standing up to the lies, exposing the darkness hiding behind wealth and power. She wasn't the victim anymore. She had become the one who would bring it all to light. With a swift motion, she grabbed the gun from the wife's hand, twisting it from her fingers before she had a chance to react. The wife stumbled back in shock, her eyes wide, her control slipping entirely. The housekeeper stood between them now, the gun still in her hands, but her posture was calm, unshaken. "You're finished," she said softly, her eyes meeting the billionaire's. He nodded, a silent agreement passing between them. Together, they had the power, now the truth, the strength, and the resolve to stop her. The wife backed away slowly, her eyes wild with panic. "This isn't over," she shouted, but the fear in her voice was unmistakable. "You won't win. You'll never win." But the housekeeper was already stepping toward the door, the billionaire by her side. The truth would spread, the pieces would fall into place. The web of lies she had been trapped in was finally unraveling. That as they stepped outside, the first light of dawn was breaking, casting a soft glow over the city. The housekeeper took a deep breath, her heart still racing. But she felt a sense of relief, a sense of power finally settling in. The battle wasn't over, but they had won this part of the war. Together, they would expose everything, and the billionaire would face the consequences of his past actions. But he would survive, and he would come out stronger. And the housekeeper, she had gone from a quiet, overlooked employee to a force of reckoning, someone who had the courage to fight for what was right, no matter the cost. The end.